So we're just going to jump right in. And Kathy, why don't you tell us a little bit of yourself? You are a powerhouse in the real estate space here in St. Louis, Missouri. So we're grateful that you're able to have some of your time today because I know real estate transactions are very timely. They need to happen very quickly oftentimes. So I'm grateful that we have your time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you entered into this space and what and how you've built what you've built?
I entered into real estate quite accidentally. I've been licensed 28 years. It was just a God-given perfect fit for my temperament and skills. And we are blessed to be partnering with Coldwell Banker Gundaker, who is the number one broker in the greater St. Louis area. And we are in the top 20 of those 1,200 approx agents in our brokerage firm. So a little bit about the business side. We are also very blessed. I tell people that I'm a billionaire when it comes to family. I have 6 children, and with their spouses, we have 10 adults, young adults in our family, and we are blessed with 11 grandchildren that range in age from 22 to 15 months. So we have a broad range of ages with our children, and we have an even broader range of ages with our grandchildren. So we're blessed and very full. We have always committed our business and our time to the Lord, and that is something that I'm grateful he's chosen to bless us, and we look toward him for our guidance and direction.
That is that you fell into it, it sounds like. How did you
Mhm.
determine that this real estate space? Because I'll speak for myself and Jim, you can chime in, please, because I know my wife and I, we've done the real estate that because of real estate, we're able to, and we initially bought our first townhome and then our single family home. This was all in Florida, and being able to utilize that to be able to have a place here. So my wife and I experienced the little I call them lily pad events. You go from here off to the next one, and then it allows you to do the next thing. And now we're trying to do that in our own little private world of rentals and Airbnbs and property management, this and that. So we're in that world as well. And Jim, why don't you share a little bit and I'll hand this off to you, Jim. I know we work with a lot of clients. We just had a client in not too long ago talking about they are wanting to create more of a liquidity within their life, and they had a portfolio of around 10 different properties that they're trying to figure out what to do. So obviously we're a good resource for them, thinking through the tactical nature of what that can look like. And so we understand we work with families constantly that are trying to figure out, hey, I've used real estate as a wealth building mechanism, and now I'm at this point of it's no longer going to serve me in that way. It needs to serve me in this way now. And so we enter into those conversations. And Jim, why don't you maybe you can share a little bit about you? Because I know talking to you, Jim, you're like, man, I thought I was going to be a real estate guy for a while. So
I went back to grad school a few years ago, 1981. And when I graduated, I had gotten a degree in geology undergraduate and realized business was more of my focus than being a geologist. I had bought a 6 unit, Kathy, when I went to school because I couldn't do it part-time. I'm too ADHD for that. Any event, the 6 unit had doubled the equity value just by the rent increases while I was going to school for 2 years. And so I was like, hey, wait a second. And financial planning at that time was an unknown term. This is 1981. And I got the ability to go in with a company that had been around since the 70s and did financial plans, which is all about proactively looking at life, which is we're going to bring in real estate and how that fits into the picture. But I've always been interested in money. I knew if this financial planning thing didn't work out, real estate was. So that's been my second. I've made money in real estate, always on the side, never gone at it full time. And we help people with that. But what Trinity has done, and I've built 3 companies, this is the third one over those 45 years, but it's always been about looking at how someone pulls the complexity of life into something that's understandable. And most people don't trust the financial services world for good reason. 90 to 95% of them are trying to sell you something. Trinity sells advice. We don't do money management. We don't do insurance sales. We don't do any of these particular product promotion like this is, we're not a bank or an insurance company or a money manager. We're actually someone who hires and fires those people for our clients, focused on what is their purpose for money. And that's what Trinity is known for. I'm very proud of today as we meet people where they're at and help them clarify where they're going, and then assemble a team like Kathy to pull together the needs when they have them, like a move, a getting into an investment portfolio. And that's why Kathy and I will also say, are part of a club that you don't want to join. We both, and this is where planning comes into the picture. I want to prompt Kathy to share because her son is a good example. We both have children that have passed before us. So that points out, I think the first thing we're going to look at is, why do people wait? We wait because of time, busyness, priority, and so forth. Go ahead and bring it back to a topic, Ryan.
I thank you, Jim. Yeah, so this is a very conversational type webinar. At the same time, we have a title: Move Before Life Moves You, Real Estate, Life Transitions, and the Money in Between. And that's why so many joined us here today on the webinar, is to have that type of discussion. Kathy, when you and I talked early on, we talked about these life transitions. I know us at Trinity Wealth, we enter into people's lives during a lot of these types of transitions. And when you think, if you're somebody that is on the webinar and they're listening, they're intrigued by this, Kathy, what kind of things have you learned along the way as a frame of mind on how people need to think about their home, or what might be triggering that next move? What kind of things are happening underneath that you think people need to pay attention to regarding when and how?
I think it's inevitable that most of us will go through a move transition sometime in the future. The difference is, will we plan for that, or will it be thrust upon us because of life circumstances? And with having raised 6 children and being in a very large extended family on both sides, it's just human nature. Most of us don't love change. It's the rare person that loves it. We're uncomfortable with making plans necessarily for the future. When you think about from a housing standpoint, if you make housing plans now and you think we'll do this in 5 years, so you're planning ahead, we think that this will work out for our time frame. We need to do this for this reason. Whether you're expanding your family, whether you're planning on retiring and downsizing, whatever those reasons are, it's something that as humans, we tend to tackle the urgent in front of us. The important in front of us takes precedent versus the planning for the future. It's just normal. And you don't know if you sell. If you say, I'll be retiring in this many years and we're going to change our housing situation, whether you move to a villa from a single family or you're relocating out of state, whatever that would be, you really don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. You don't know if it's going to be during a recession, during a strong market, what's the interest rates going to be, what will be all the pieces that come to play. So I think people hesitate, not just because it's human nature, and most of us have such urgent lives, they're busy. Puzzle, how can we really make a finite plan when we don't know all those answers? And I think that prevents us from planning in advance, but that advanced planning is so important. Even if it has to revise over the years and evolve, so to speak, it's so important for us to take that step soon.
Yeah, we often say to people, our biggest competitor is people putting aside the time. They're so busy. They know they need to do this. They know the intricacies between tax planning, their estate planning picture, the current with that dream home or the home we're in, the vacation home, the second home, kids, trips, travel, all of that stuff is the biggest competitor we face, because it's, oh, I know I ought to do that, but I'm going to get around to it.
Kathy, I know we didn't know we've met recently, but when I mentioned I lived in Florida for a while, And we had a real estate agent, great individual, loved him. And I'll have to say, he became a marriage counselor along the way. I feel like a good something when you're a real estate agent, you don't really thought you signed up for that, but you're working
Mhm.
intimately with families in these very what can be stressful times. Sometimes they're very easy, but there's a lot of emotional change. So, what emotional factors should people pay attention to during these major seasons of not just there's the financial piece, of course, but what are those emotional elements that you've watched come into play and direct decision making?
I commonly tell people that I can't make decisions for them. I can't even know what the right decision for them is. Even Trinity is so well known in their financial planning, the integrous nature of your business, which is not necessarily shared in the industry, as you had said, Jim. But even with that, even if you have the most pure of pure intention for your clients, I can't make that decision for them. And I say I many times don't know God's will for my family. I can't make a decision for their family, but we certainly can partner with them, give detailed resources. Like I said, lay the puzzle pieces out. There are so many different reasons people move and probably come to you also. We have family formation. People are getting married or households are coming together. Family expansion, where there's children being added. And in this generation, we're seeing multifamily generational living. So people are buying homes. I just closed one today where I represented the seller, but the buyer had three children, three young children, and the parent of one of the buyers is moving in with them. So it was family formation in a different way. People change and move for school districts. There's happy reasons and sad reasons that we help represent clients. Those were some of the happy ones. We have divorce, we have separations, we have death, financial gain, where people might be upsizing or buying a different type of home, newer construction. We have people downsizing, perhaps retirement, and perhaps financially. They need to downsize with changes in income or job losses. So there's both pros and cons, but I see a big difference between the planned move, even if it's not ideally detailed, versus the unplanned move. Anytime something is thrust upon you, could be for any of those reasons, especially if they're more stressful in the negative parts of life that we all have experienced. It's going to be more stressful mentally, physically, emotionally. When you're doing things in a unplanned way, you may be doing them in months versus what a family that planned a move, whether purchase or sell, planned for years. There's a whole different process. And so even if you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, doing something now on that path, even if you never needed it, it never happens, is my best advice to help someone plan for that. And there are so many facets we couldn't get into today. Some people live in condos. There's a lot of transitions in real estate right now in the condo market nationwide and locally. Some people have municipal inspections, which could be fire districts or cities or counties, and they need to take steps to comply if they want to sell for top dollar retail. All those little things play out, but it is important to have some advice and start meeting not only financially, but also housing wise.
Jim, I'm going to ask you a question because I the big word that Kathy's talking about is planning. And I know there's probably, Kathy, I would suspect a very different experience when you work with a family that is more, has been like when life is upon them, forcing the transition versus a family that's maybe worked with, they understand their financial situation, they understand their budget, they understand. So, Jim, maybe speak a little bit to the planning part because I think we can connect a lot on that type of issue. How have you seen that play out well within your space and within those that don't?
We specialize in dealing with people, particularly during these transitionary times, looking at the what's next in life. I know, Kathy, you are here with us today because one of our advisors, Eric Steiner, has known you for 20, 30 years. And anytime a client says, I might have to move, I might have to, my parents need to move in, I lost my job, I would divorce, all of those things that you mentioned, or that second home, Eric is like screaming, Kathy Renaud, you got to talk to Kathy. She will take care of you. And it's that personal forward looking that we appreciate about what you do, how you make it easy, remove the emotion from it, walk people through this difficult stage. We like to think we do the same thing by pulling together. A story I would tell briefly is my first client was someone who started in the mailroom at Mallinckrodt and rose
Wow.
up through the ladder to become the senior vice president, got overlooked when they replaced the CEO, and he got upset and turned out to be the best thing that ever happened in his life and left, went to a headhunter, became a client for us. It was a huge liquidity event because he moved to the East Coast. And now all of a sudden, his home in Ladue, plus all of his 401k, plus all of his investment stuff, like we are moving, and none of this makes any sense. This was 1982. And so it was a total of about, which was a lot of money at that time, $2.5 million needed to be reevaluated and scrambled with a new home on the East Coast. Turned out wonderful for him. But you can imagine all of the emotional trauma that you're going through with something like that. Leaving, he had been with Mallinckrodt for over 30 years and ended up that being the most successful part of his financial journey as he ended up going on to 3 other companies, being a troubleshooting turnaround specialist. But that's how planning comes into a picture. And if you can forward look at it, Kathy, I'd love to hear more about when and this is springtime, this is the prime real estate time. Is it or isn't it?
It is the prime time. So I usually say that the weather forecasters season calendar is different than ours. I usually see strong pickup in February. We usually have very strong February, at least the last half. March and April are probably our strongest months. By the time we get to May, we typically, on most years, and I've been doing this 28 years, so there might have been a couple years that broke that mold, but for the most part, by the time we get to May, we're easing into an early summer market. And so where competition and inventory is picking up a little bit more. And so we are in a strong market. There is a lot of activity going on. It's still a seller's market, certainly not to the degree it was when 2020 and 2021, where we had this perfect storm of 2.5 to 3% interest rates hit at the same time, where the COVID lifestyle factors hit, where people were working from home. They didn't have home offices. The kids came home for school. They were wanting to make updates, but they couldn't get contractors for 6 months. Appliances were on a 9-month order. Wood had quadrupled in price. So that made more people want to go buy a bigger home. At the same time, the interest rates were low. So it was just a perfect storm from the standpoint of in a seller's life. It wasn't necessarily a piece of cake for buyers. But we have had a good, strong 5 years. And one thing that I want to mention personally is the club that we're in together is that my son passed away 8 years ago yesterday. And he was the oldest of our 6 kids, our only son. He had been married 10 years, and as a very young man in his 20s, he bought term life insurance. And I talked to my daughter-in-law even this morning, and I said, hey, what would you like to share with people? Because she was a very young widow at the age of 34. She had a 2-year-old boy, a 4-year-old boy, and she was 4 months pregnant with a third boy. So it was anytime you lose a spouse or a loved one suddenly, it's tragic. But this was, if someone would pick a time of life, this would not have been a chosen event. And he had a blood clot that caused a heart attack, and he died fatally and instantly. So from that standpoint, our family has supported Courtney and the boys. We've chosen to thrive and not just survive the best we can. It's not easy most days, especially for Courtney and my grandsons, which, by the way, of those 11 grandchildren, 9 are boys and 2 are girls. And I had 5 daughters and 1 son, so it reversed. But John took out that term life insurance, which gave Courtney the incredible blessing of keeping her home. And whether you keep it invested and you keep the home or you pay it off, she chose to pay it off a couple years after he passed. It brought her peace for that to be done. And whether there's a lot of voices, and you guys certainly are a barometer to keep that level, and the financial advisors give your clients advice. But for her, that was very important, and peace can be priceless. For her, it was. She chose to pay it off. And what a blessing to have that option. There are people that don't have that benefit. They have to go back to work. The children have to go to daycare. I call those secondary losses. So you lost your spouse, and it could be, it doesn't, you could be 94 or 54 or 34, but that's the primary loss. But then there's these things that affect us. Sometimes people have to sell their house. That's a secondary loss. Sometimes they have to take children out of maybe private school in public school. There's all these things that kind of come down and play when life transitions. And that applies with divorce, with upsizing or downsizing. There's things that are secondary factors, and that gets pretty complicated. We do try to advise people anything we can see that's in our wheelhouse, even though they make those decisions. And one last thing that I would say is Courtney advised that she would recommend that all families, whether they're young or old, that they have an up-to-date shared password list. Even if you think you're on, I think they believed that beneficiaries were on everything. There were a couple small things that fell through the crack that probably caused stress and possibly some loss of funds. Double check your beneficiaries on every single thing, big, small, or in between. Make sure your passwords are constantly being reviewed, because that's very important and can really save a lot of stress. When you have a spouse, and now I'm talking more seniors, when you have a spouse that precedes you and you are left to downsize on your own, it's extremely traumatic. Having two people make decisions, the reduction of personal property is one of the hardest processes because it's so intermingled with memories, and it's very complex when you're dealing with grief. There's a lot of layers of that onion that need to be peeled back. And all those personal things mean things, and it's an extremely difficult process. So I believe that some people wait too long to take that step. It'd be easier to do together. If you're downsizing your home or downsizing your personal property, that would be another wise advice I would give is don't wait till you have to do it if you can plan together, and it would be an adventure for both of you.
Jim, do you have any follow-up on that one?
Yeah, I know my mother, my dad never thought that he would make it to neither of his parents made it to their 60s. My
Um,
parents, my parents were early clients for me in the business, and I reckon that we're doing a financial plan on him, and I'm trying to pull out of him, when do you want to retire? And he was just like stubbornly not going to give me a number. And I finally said, Dad, look. And my mom was someone who was in the background financially. My dad was the one that did all of that stuff. He worked, mom stayed at home. Long story short, it was like he shared with me, I'll never make it. I said, Dad, most people pick 65. And I'm a young whippersnapper at the time, 23 years old, and said, Dad, just use 65. And he said, I'll never make 65.
mm,
Okay, fast forward today. My mom died in an accident in 2010. And my mom was the only girl my dad ever kissed. It's the only
mm,
girl he ever dated. It was like his life was torn in half. And he was 50-50 for that first 1 to 2 years. He
mm.
wouldn't eat, wouldn't feed himself. Dad, if you're watching this, smile, because there is a beautiful side to it. He's 95 today.
Wow.
Never
Wow.
thought ahead long term. Fortunately, we did. We plan on stuff like this, never thinking my mom would die before my dad. But I hear what you're saying. And Kathy, let us draw you to some of the challenges that people have today with interest rates having jumped up over where most people have their current, because most, at least all of our clients have been, if they have mortgages, look at how do I take advantage of this cheap money,
Mm.
2.5%, 3%, 4% money. And today, what is it today? And how do you counsel people through this season in life when it is time for them to move up or move down?
I think the interest rates historically, obviously you referenced you 45 years ago and 44 years ago in your analogy. So you've been in your business a long time. From the standpoint of interest rates, my husband and I bought our first house together in 81, and he had one before we were married. And interest rates, and I am not fibbing, people think that I'm making this up, they were 19%. So we had assumed VA and FHA loans are assumable, conventional or not. We had assumed a VA loan that was 13%, and we literally thought we had robbed the bank. Now, it was much more different from the standpoint of tax. Most of your interest was tax deductible. That's not the case now. So it wasn't quite as scary as it sounds. But the 6%, we were hoovering close to 7 for years after it adjusted back up. And we, in fact, from December of 21, when it was 2.5 to 3%, it jumped up by May, just months later, to 6.5. It was just a crazy shock for all of us. But the interest rates actually in the sixes, which they went down a month or two ago to just under 6. We had a couple clients lock in at 5.9, 5.99. But we've pretty much been about a percent to a 0.5% lower than it had been for 2 or 3 years. So we actually are lower than majority of the years that I've been an agent for 28 years. But that is a factor because we were quite spoiled, and it will naturally keep people in their homes longer. If you think about it, if you've got a 2.5 to 3%, you are going to keep that property. We have clients that are, if they make a move up and they dip their toes in that higher rate, they're keeping their prior house as investment, which is a wonderful idea. So it's wonderful to see how they'll be able to use that for years, and that's wonderful. Another trend that I'm seeing is I've talked my potential clients out of listings, a couple of them. In the past couple of years, I've had several older women, widows, their husband passed away. The interest is not a factor, their home is paid off, but they are very concerned about the taxes and insurance. And they have a nice home, but they feel like they have to do something. They want to sell because they feel strangled by that. And I'm able to break it down and say, what are these fees? Let's break it by 12. Sometimes it's 400 to 500 a month. And I would say, where are you going to go? And so they're thinking they have no idea of the rental market. They're thinking they could go rent something cheaper, maybe take that pressure off. And in reality, it would cost them triple what they're paying to have an apartment, no garage, whatever. And so, we've been able to share that and in a very integrous way, just like Trinity does, to lay the pieces out. And so it wasn't time for them to move. And it was something that would have affected their lifestyle. Another thing with us having all adult children, 3 of our daughters live out of state, 2 are married. There's 4 grandchildren between the 2 of them. And when they come back, we have a house full. So we actually have been in our house 33 years, longer than I've been a licensed agent. But for us to lose bedrooms and bathrooms would not help, because when they come, they usually come at the same time. We have a full house. We love that. There's a lot of activity, commotion. And so sometimes it's not best to downsize if you have adult children that need to use your home as a home base. And it's not automatic. It's a very individual decision. You could say, okay, we've retired, our income has declined, we don't need the bedrooms on a daily, weekly basis. It's just not automatic. It has to be individualized, and someone like you do, like we do, to point out all the pieces of the puzzle so that family can make a decision.
Kathy, I'm going
Kathy,
to say a couple things. Going back to your daughter's testimonial about passwords, I'll tell a quick story because I had a friend from Colorado, good family friend, and he pulled up this binder and showed it on Zoom. And on the front of the binder, it said, "How to run your life." And I go, "What's that all about?" He goes, in this binder is every statement, every password, every account, every phone number, everything that you need to run your life if I die." And he said he drills his wife once a month on where it's located, how to access the safe, how to open it up.
Wow.
Drills his kids once a year on all the same information. And I told my wife that, and she said, "I will kill you if you ever do that to me. I will. Do not drill me on that information." So it's not for everybody. But
Right.
it's the importance in particularly in this digital age, very advantageous. And that the type of person who I'm speaking of, he likes to manage, he loves that. I know with a lot of clients that we work with, Trinity Wealth Advisors at least, we become the quarterback. We help come alongside people with all those pieces from the estate planning to the beneficiary conversations to the CPA agent and having those types of conversations, Kathy, that you're also having alongside them, which are this potential upsizing, downsizing conversations. I wanted to drill on a question of that, and I think it can go to both of you because you might have different answers on how this can look. What are signs? You've mentioned some, but let's be maybe real specific. What are signs that you feel like people need to pay attention to of their current situation that is saying, hey, this season of life, the home or this piece of real estate is not working for you? And that could be a downsizing conversation, that could be an upsizing conversation. So, how do you navigate? What have you seen that? And Jim, I think maybe on the financial side, I think there's even a different type of answer that maybe you could give as well.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I would say one thing is sometimes there are signs. Obviously, the example I gave with my son was sudden. And sometimes the decisions that we make, real estate, investment, financial, everything, medical, it doesn't really come into complete focus until afterward. We make that decision, we commit, we move through it. And sometimes we don't really have that complete focus until we've gone through that, especially with seniors. Sometimes it's medical. They're in a two-story home, their knees are giving out, they have MS, Parkinson's, they're not able to do the steps. So sometimes it is physical and the sign is there, and moving can be so scary and challenging. There are people that stay longer than they should from a medical standpoint. It's a heck of a lot of work. I know that. We have been able to get our trust in order and financial things in order, and we're blessed with that. My son was in the process of that with Courtney when he passed, so that was not complete. Gratefully, both parents didn't pass, but she finished it then after he passed, so that the boys would be taken care of with her wishes. But it's a heck of a lot of work to go through that. Other than medical, financial, some people know I'm retiring, my life is changing, my money is downsizing. People get fired or released earlier than they plan. And so that again would be sudden versus planning. But I think the financial is something that my husband's good at, that trying to line out finances, and I'm more bigger picture and marketing and juggling, but he will lay things out, and someone in the family needs to be geared that way, or they need to partner with Trinity Wealth Advisors to be able to get someone that gives them that perspective so they can plan from a budgetary standpoint, because sometimes it's just a little too late. And that's my opinion looking on the outside in. But if you're too late and it's a medical or it's a financial, then that can make that process so much more difficult.
Kathy, I love the way you said that, because it's like we're not right for everybody. The objectivity helps most people when you can sounding board off. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. Ryan brings people to our table all the time that want a second opinion. What am I doing? And we're not right for everybody. Maybe half of the people that we meet with in what we call that right fit meeting are the right fit, either for them or for us. But the whole perspective of how do you plan for occasions. I just love the story. I hurt with the story of your son, but it's like even a young person, and they get sold insurance by insurance salesmen where they get permanent life. Or your son was obviously smarter than the average by knowing, oh, term, you get much more bang for your buck. And that is a great solution often. But pulling all of these things together, in fact, knowing what options exist. For example, a lot of people, their dream in the accumulation stage of life is paying off the house. They get their house paid off, and then they've got this huge asset in this home that becomes a millstone around their neck because of some of the things oh, it's a two-story. Oh, I wouldn't know how to, oh, because they waited too long. And we're that objective voice to say, you could do this. and even looking at, oh, if this asset were liquid, you could do this. Or if you do a rental and people are scared to death of rentals and property
Mhm.
management and bad tenants and all of that stuff, and there's property management. I know all of these situations are right or wrong. As Ryan was talking about, somebody that we're just now talking with that has 10 homes bought during the 2000 and it bought them perfectly. And now at this season in life where wife going through some health challenges, this season in life dealing with subcontractors is a nightmare for them. And I'm ready to leave, to exit this season. How do I do that? So, what Trinity does is help people look at what are the options. And that's where we call in specialists like you, Kathy, that can handhold somebody through without the pressure of, oh, what do I do next? What do I do next? Oh, I don't know how to do this. It's kind of when that team we're good at is pulling together, as Ryan mentioned, that quarterback, kind of like saying, okay, let's look at the tax ramifications. What's the CPA going to say? And we like looking before the year's over as opposed to after the year's over. I know a novel idea in the tax world, but you can still do something about it versus it's too late.
Well, I wanted to shift just a moment because we have some attendees here. I want to thank you all for joining on today. And there is what I wanted to point out is what do we call it? The chat feature. There's a chat at the bottom. So if there are anything along the way, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but feel free to drop any question in the chat. So if you have something specific that pertains to you or your parents, or you're watching somebody that's close to you trying to figure out what's next, or you're just like, hey, the market is crazy and I don't know what to make of it, whether it's heads or tails, you can put a question in the chat. So don't use, wait a minute, you do not use the
Q&A. Go
Q&A.
to the Q&A section,
Oh, is
Ryan.
it the Q? We use the Q&A, not the chat. I couldn't remember which one. Okay, so use the Q&A. Don't use the chat. Use the Q&A piece, and that we can answer some of those.
You know, there's a couple of questions in there, Ryan, if you can pull those up. And
Let's look
one of them
at
is, Kathy, how do you differentiate yourself from other real estate agents? That's a
yeah.
great one.
I think the detail, the organization, the systems we have in place, no one's perfect and infallible, of course, but we definitely have less surprises because of the order and the format and the checklists and things that we practice routinely. I also believe I have wonderful real estate friends. I'm in one of the best companies, the best company in St. Louis, and I have wonderful friends. But our level of integrity and commitment to service, our motto is honesty, integrity, and service. It's not just a motto, it's a lifestyle. And that's true. We guarantee that level. We, as pure as any heart can be, we offer that to our clients. We really want what's best for them. And I think that differentiates us in our business. I have a team of partners that we work together, and we love our parent company too.
Cool, cool. There's a great one there by Eric that I'm going to suggest, Ryan, that you make as an offer to people that are listening if they want.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead, Jim.
we have some forms that that provide the ability to
Right.
store passwords.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's exceptional. I love
Yeah.
that.
So what was noted? Yes. Thank you, Eric. He's listening. Yeah, we have processes within our Trinity Wealth advisors here to help that. If you're like, you don't want to be the person that has the little booklet of passwords that's hidden in your nightstand, so you're keeping everything tracked, that's a start. But we have some better processes here at Trinity Wealth that can help make that very easy for you. And we store those things, we prepare locations, and that helps with estate documents. We work very closely with excellent professionals here around town, people like Kathy, but on the estate side. So if those are questions and you feel like, boy, I'm just not sure if this is right, they say it's right. Can you guys double check and look at all this? We do that for you. And so we can do that as well. Someone, Jim, it looks like you're typing maybe a question, but here's another one. Here's another question. As someone who is retiring in early next year and moving to the East Coast, thoughts on decision to buy immediately or rent until we get to know the community?
I would say, first of all, it's never too early, even if it's a year away, to start the research process on your current home and learn about the steps that need to be taken and spread that out to make it a little bit less challenging and a little bit more enjoyable. As far as people that relocate, many people choose to rent for 6 months or a year to get to know the community, unless you have family, friends, you've maybe visited yearly for a decade and you really know that area. There are many professionals that suggest maybe rent for a short period of time. We also have, that was a good segue into something that I hadn't mentioned, but it had in my notes. Even though your people that you serve are better off than if they had not discovered Trinity, there are many people in America that cannot buy without selling. They cannot buy if they're moving from place A to place B. They cannot buy B, or even if they can, they're uncomfortable with owning two homes at one time. And sometimes if you have a mortgage, that complicates your ability to buy without selling your current home. And even people who have their home paid off are sometimes choosing to do a double move versus a double ownership. And right now, there isn't much in between. You either own two homes at one time if you're going to find your ideal home first and then put yours up for sale, or you're going to do a double move. You're going to sell your house. You're basically going to be homeless for a period of time, whether that's weeks or months or a year, until you find the house that you want to purchase. And there are people that make that decision because they're financially more comfortable. And then that means you have to discover, where will my double move be? Do I have friends or family? Could I live with a parent, or parents live with an adult child? Do you have a vacation home? We've had people that have Lake of the Ozarks properties and they just work from home down there for 6 to 12 months while they figure out what they're going to do. But that is pretty much where we're at, where you may have to do one of those two things. And if you do rent, that gives you the ability to perhaps get the other home sold, close that shop up, and then also discover your new surroundings and make a more educated decision.
What the only thing I'd add to that, Ryan, is that we help people walk through, like, what is this time period going to look like? We always recommend renting first to get the lay of the land, as Kathy mentioned. Think about any place that you've ever lived. You know a lot more about the place when you're there than when you're looking at it from a drive-through. But what Trinity does is walks through people like, ooh, how do I keep this cash from home if that's going to be a deposit on the next home? Do I want to borrow again? Oh, the tax side of this makes this cheap money based on your comfort level with feeling about investment return. How do I protect myself through this transition so that I do retain those options? Oh, I find something even better than I thought. How does that fit into the new picture? So, looking at all of those what ifs is what we're very well attuned to.
I think that question right there is a good springboard into kind of wrapping up this conversation, but also giving people the how do we get in touch with each of us? So that question alone touches on your space, Kathy, and our space, because that came in anonymously as a question, but those are exactly some of the transitions that Trinity Wealth helps with. I know that. And then that's obviously touching on some type of real estate transaction issues. What I will say is, for people on this webinar, I would love to direct you to trinitywealth.com. So up in the top right, you can request a call that just syncs up with our calendars very easily. And I'd be happy to follow up with anything that came up along this webinar in regards to what Trinity Wealth can provide for you, which is help give a holistic picture for those types of major moments. Happy to have that conversation with you. So trinitywealth.com, in the top right, there's a little button there and you can request a call and we'll get you hooked up easily. And then you can see Jim's email, jmatush@trinitywealth.com. Mine's the same, except it's my name, R. Wagner, trinitywealth.com. And then, Kathy, for others on the call to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
RenaudTeam.com, and that's Renaud team.com. Kathy Renaud, CBG, Coldwell Banker Gundaker at gmail.com would be the
And
best way. My cell phone is 314-504-6655.
And it goes without saying, anybody on this webinar now will get an email of the video, so they'll be able to watch that again later. There are many that couldn't join the webinar today. They're also going to get that email. And everybody that's on the webinar today somehow came through one of our channels of LinkedIn or Facebook or email or something like that, which will go out as well. And we'll make sure that both our information and yours, Kathy, and yours to ours and ours to yours and yours list and our list and all that will all get synced up just fine. So we wanted to, so if there's any final party notes, Kathy, thank you so much for taking the time today. We love at Trinity Wealth Advisors working with people that are experts in their space. And so we're just grateful for how you've been able to attune that career, working with people well and getting the job done. I like to say that we do the same here through people like Jim, who have been doing this for
And
decades. And so it's a fun place to be where we get to help people solve people's problems. I told it to a guy this morning. We get to help people and we get to meet people and help people. And that's a fun part of what we get to do. Jim, any
I,
parting
I just
notes as well? And Kathy?
I love the way Kathy left her cell phone number. It comes across, Kathy, you legitimately care. You want to be a resource for people. In today's real estate world, where every other house mom and friend and whatever is a real estate has their license and wants to help you, I know over the 20 years that we've used you, having a professional that's reliable, that takes care of people, that can deal with people through the emotions, the ups and downs of a home sale is something that we welcome. So thank you.
I do want to give a quick shout out to Eric Steiner, who I believe it probably was about 25 years ago. We were able to serve him and his wife, Claire, in selling and purchasing a home. And they've been longtime residents like I have been. Eric's an incredibly genuine, caring man and extremely educational in the financial world. But that was our connection to Trinity, was through our friend and past client, Eric. If I could give just one or two sentences to summarize, I believe that life transitions and future housing moves are inevitable for pretty much all of us, or the people who, if we leave, are taking care of our estate. But preparedness is optional. That is a choice we have to make. And if we treat estate planning, future home movement, even simple things like starting a list of all the updates you've done, the years, having records, compiling things to make it easier if one spouse leaves before the other, to help children, adult children that might be taking this over. And if you're blessed to be able to do that, you'll still be glad that you put that step in. But if we treat that future movement like it's a critical business meeting, it's an urgent medical appointment, I think we'll prioritize it differently than if we do, like you said, Jim, we'll get around to it someday. That would be my recommendation. That certainly was my daughter-in-law's recommendation, to make those things a high priority and set a timeline and get it done.
Wonderful. Couldn't be better said. Ryan, take us out.
That's it. Thank you, Kathy, again. Thank you, everybody that attended. And if there's anybody in your world that you want to share this with, within the next 5-ish business days, I believe you'll get an updated video link for this. So feel free to share it, whoever you'd like. And again, I put Kathy's cell and my cell, and those are direct numbers. So we're easy to get a hold of, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with any questions you might have. But thank you for joining the Trinity Wealth Advisors webinar. And thank you, Kathy, again. And we'll be in
Yeah,
touch.
You're welcome.
Kathy, I love how you have let me ask you, what is your number one source for new business?
We have a high percentage of repeat clients. We're both from large families. Our families have been very supportive of our business. We do get new online leads and referrals. We have strong presence on Zillow and Realtor.com as far as referrals, but our largest source is repeat clients and sphere of influence, people that know us or have known us for years. We're blessed. That's precious to us, that people that know us, who we are, who we were before we were in real estate. That has been an incredible blessing that I can't even stress how important it is to us.
Likewise for us. That's our number one source of new business. And if you like this webinar, feel free to pass it on to anybody you think would help. And we'd love to hear about it as well. Thank you for attending today.
Yep.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.